Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Karen Brownlee, and I am the Adult Program Coordinator at the North Suburban YMCA in Northbrook, Illinois. In that role, I bring a variety of programs to our community, including social networking opportunities, a caregiver support group, brain games, and the YMCA Education Series, which you are attending this evening. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Sandwich Generation Hero, understanding the challenges and concerns of the sandwich generation and how daily money managers can help, hosted by Ifat Bossi. Ifat holds a degree in accountancy from the University of Illinois and an MBA from DePaul University in Chicago. She is a CPA with experience in public accounting, nonprofit, and the private sector. 9 years ago, Ifat founded Bottom Line Financial to assist people in completing their financial and administrative obligations, and we are fortunate to have her here with us tonight to share her expertise. This is Ifat's first presentation with the North Suburban YMCA, and she has been kind enough to schedule another presentation with us on April 29th, entitled The ABCs of Online Banking. We will be recording tonight's session to make it available as a podcast on our WISE website, so you'll be able to reference it down the road as well. The YMCA Education Series typically lasts an hour, and Ifat will take questions at the end of her presentation. If everyone could please mute themselves during the presentation so that background noise doesn't interfere with Ifat's presentation, you can then unmute yourself when she opens the forum for questions. The YMCA Education Series is free and open to the public, but as a nonprofit organization, we always appreciate donations. If you enjoyed tonight's program and would like to support the educational programming at the North Suburban YMCA, please feel free to make a donation to our Y, either by going to our website at www.nsymca.org or emailing me. Again, thank you for joining us tonight, and a special thank you to Ifat for your time and your effort in putting together tonight's presentation. I will now let you take it from here and talk about how daily money managers can help those of you who are living in the sandwich generation.
Thank you so much, Karen. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I look forward to spending the next hour or so with you talking about the sandwich generation hero. And as Karen said, I am a CPA. I studied accounting at the University of Illinois in Urbana and later got my MBA. I did work in public accounting and nonprofit and private sector, all before starting Bottom Line Financial, which is a daily money management firm. So what I wanted to accomplish today was talk a little bit about what the sandwich generation is, what are some of their concerns, what are some of their challenges, what are they looking for, and then shift gears and talk about what are some of the solutions that daily money managers can provide. And in addition to that, I wanted to bring to your attention a couple of case studies that I thought might be helpful. And then at the end, I would love to hear some stories from you or entertain any questions that you might have. Before we get started, I did want to share a short little clip, a short little video about the sandwich generation. And don't focus so much on the dollars that they talk about that is spent, the average dollars spent. I've heard different amounts. So here we go.
Are you feeling a little sandwiched? The sandwich generation is a generation of people who are caring for both their children and their elderly parents. 1 in 8 Americans aged 40 to 60 is currently raising a child and supporting one or both parents at the same time. Is your life on the menu? If you're a traditional sandwich, you're stuffed between responsibilities to your parents and your children. If you're a club sandwich, you've got your parents and your children with an extra helping of either your grandparents or your grandchildren. Feeling full yet? The average sandwich generationer is a 49-year-old woman with a full-time job. She spends 20 hours per week providing direct care for her aging parents, on top of working and caring for her children. She is almost 25% more likely to be living paycheck to paycheck than her coworkers who aren't supporting their parents. That's because she spends close to $30,000 per year on the home health aide who stays with her parents while she's at work. Not surprisingly, she's twice as likely as her peers who are not overstuffed with parental care responsibilities to report debilitating stress levels. With the economic and emotional strain that can accompany the responsibility of caring for multiple generations of family members, many sandwich generationers have moments where they wonder why they've taken on so much. What are our moral obligations to our parents?
So, the sandwich generation refers to adult children who are raising families of their own and also having responsibilities to their aging parents, or maybe their grandparents, or maybe their grandchildren, as the video suggests. It's not really a generation in a formal sense, such as like the greatest generation or the baby boomers. It's more a phenomenon that or a situation that affects anybody who has parents and kids that need support at the same time. And their kids might be little, might be very little, and they might require a lot of attention. And as you know, raising a family can be very expensive. Or their kids might be grown. They might have just graduated college and come back to live at home. And they may not be working. They may be at grad school, and they might still be on their parents' dime. And those kids who return home, that are between 18 and 29 years old, who return to live with mom and dad, they're known as the boomerang kids. And during COVID, it is becoming increasingly more common because the jobs just aren't out there and employers may not be hiring. And according to Pew, the Pew Research Center, they determined that 52% of young adults lived with one or both parents in July of 2020, hashtag COVID-19. So on one side, we have adult kids raising families of their own. And on the other side, we have adult kids that have responsibility to their parents. And their parents might still be working. Their parents might still be involved in the community, but they might need just a little bit of assist. Or their parents might be ill and unable to perform activities of daily living. And at that point, the adult child might need to step in as a caregiver. And being a caregiver, as you may or may not know, can be a full-time 24-hour-a-day job. And to complicate the situation, if the adult child isn't local and doesn't live by the parent, then that adds another layer of how do I help my mom and dad? And in addition to that, the senior might not have saved enough for retirement. So they too might be relying on their adult kids for additional financial support. The members of the sandwich generation might be working full time. They might be running businesses of their own. And you might know that when you run your own business, you can't just leave and close the door behind you. You're thinking about it all the time. You're thinking, can I make my payroll? Can I cover my other expenses? And again, during COVID, the situation might be untenable. Or they might be working in corporate America and have equally demanding responsibilities. So some members of the sandwich generation might be putting off retirement because they need to help support their aging parents and their adult kids. Suffice it to say, members of the sandwich generation are under considerable financial and emotional stress, and they know they need help. And they're looking for vetted resources to help them with their responsibilities. And one of the areas that they're looking for help is in managing their parents' finances. But they're concerned, and rightfully so, because there is a lot of financial exploitation out there, and they simply don't know who to trust. So when adult kids or the seniors are looking for help managing their parents' finances, members of American Association of Daily Money Managers are in a position to help. And I want to just take a step back and talk about this organization because it is such a wonderful resource, both for the Daily Money Manager as well as for members of the community. And American Association of Daily Money Managers is also referred to as ADM, or AADMM. And it was founded in 1998, and it's the organization that governs the profession of daily money managers. And as I said, it's a wonderful organization on many levels. For the daily money manager, it provides educational resources on new technologies, networking opportunities for professional growth. But for the layperson, it offers phenomenal resource as well. And that is why you're here, to learn about that. And I will share that if somebody is looking for a daily money manager, they can hop on the ADM website and plug in their zip code and find a daily money manager in their area. In addition to that, if they are interviewing daily money managers, there are resources for that. They can find interviewing questions to help them with that process. And I think the thing that speaks loudest is if a family is looking for a daily money manager and they hire somebody who's a member of ADM, anybody who's a member of ADM has to pass a background check. And it's not just once, it's every 2 years. So that is a vetting process, and that essentially separates members of ADM from other people doing similar work. So what are some of the signs that it's time to get help with the finances from a daily money manager? Number one, if the senior finds that every month they are running out of money and requesting from their wealth manager additional funds that have not been budgeted for and risk running out of money, that could be a sign. Another sign is if somebody has been victimized by financial exploitation, that very well could be a sign. And what you should know is that 1 out of 5 Americans over the age of 65 have been victims, according to the Elder Fraud Study. And the cost associated with that fraud is $2.9 billion, according to the MetLife study. And the truth of the matter is, it's probably higher than that. That is what goes reported. And a lot of elder abuse goes unreported. We'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. But I do want to mention an organization called Adult Protective Services. I think it's a great organization for you to have on your radar. And they used to have, and I still think they still have, an office at the North Shore Senior Center. This organization they are the first responders for adults over the age of 65 and people with disabilities who have been victimized. They are the first responders, and they are a federally funded organization. They have connections with the police, with social services, with the medical community, and they are just a great resource for you to know about. And if you know somebody who could benefit from their help, please reach out to them. And the last sign that somebody could benefit from the help of a daily money manager is forgetfulness. If somebody is not remembering to pay their bills, they're losing their bills, they're getting slapped with late fees and penalties, it might be worthwhile having a conversation with a daily money manager. And I actually would like to share a story with you. And throughout this conversation, or this presentation, I'll be sharing different stories and case studies with you. But in regard to forgetfulness, I have a client that she is an adult daughter of a gentleman, and she noticed a couple years ago that her father, who, by the way, was a professional, bright, capable, raised a family, a loving family, he started to, a lot of piles started to gather on his kitchen table, and the daughter noticed that they were bills, and she asked if she can assist him with his mail and his bill payment and setting up auto pay. And he declined, and she respected that. Fast forward, he forgot to pay his supplemental insurance bill, and the carrier dropped him, and that translated to him having to pay thousands of dollars in medical bills that he otherwise wouldn't have had to pay. And so the daughter then needed to step in, and that's at that point is when I was hired. If you see any of these signs, ask questions and see if something further needs to be done before a situation arises that you would not want to take place. So how can daily money managers help? What are some of the solutions? First, I would love for you to know that every engagement is different. Everybody's needs are different. For some people, um, well, let me just say that a lot of people think about bill pay when they think about daily money managers, and definitely we do bill pay. But last week I worked with a client and I helped her set up for a family member the registration for his COVID-19 vaccine. And for another client, I assisted her getting on Zoom, and I shared my screen, and we were able to do her QuickBooks Online. So for both of these clients, I don't do bill payment at all. It's all special projects. But many people think of bill pay when they think about daily money managers, and we definitely help with bill pay. When I start with a client, I always suggest to put whatever we can on auto pay that's appropriate, but some people don't want auto pay, and we write the checks for their signature. Some people want us to continue using Quicken, so we print the checks for their signature from Quicken. And then some people want us to bank online. So there are various solutions for bill pay, and everybody is different. When we do bill pay, we will also do the bank reconciliation so people know how much money they have in their account at any time. We can create spending plans or budgets for people so they know how much they could spend in any given time period, so they live within their means. Right now, during tax time, we help people organize their tax documents and help them bring it to their CPAs if need be so that they file on time. And for other people, we help them with Quicken and QuickBooks so that they stay organized. What's not on here, I'd also like to mention, we also assist people with vendor relations, because oftentimes people can't manage the phone so well. They can't understand the prompts when they call, like press 1 for this and 2 for that. They can't process that very well, or else some people have macular degeneration. They're losing their vision and they can't see the keypad. So in most of my meetings, I make 1 or 2 phone calls during the course of the meeting to help out with that. And in addition, I also want to mention a very common thing that we do is assist with getting reimbursed for long-term care insurance. It's important to note that when daily money managers help with bill pay, we're not simply paying the bills, we're looking at them for reasonableness and accuracy. And what I mean by that is if I start an engagement with an 85 or 90-year-old and I see that they have on auto pay health club membership, I ask if they're still using it. And if they are, great. If they're not, I suggest that the membership be canceled. If they have a cell phone with a data plan on it, and it's a big data plan, and they may or may not be using it, we talk about that and we make a determination if they need all that data or if they need any data at all. So things like that we talk about. We take a look at their credit card bills, we take a look at their bank statements, we ask questions, and we become familiar with their spending patterns, so we know what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And we are therefore at the forefront of identifying fraud. In my experience, what I found in working with families, one of the things that they appreciate the most and the value add that daily money managers provide is in referrals to reliable, competent introductions or referrals, people that can help them with the day-to-day. This is especially true for people who are on this journey for the first time and really not having an understanding of who to turn to for certain things. So daily money managers are relationship builders, and we make introductions all the time. And if I'm in a position to make an introduction to 2 or 3 people, I will, so that people can reach out to those introductions and make a determination for themselves who's the best fit for them. So we help with home care and estate planning attorneys and decorators to make sure the home is safe. And you could see there the list goes on. When I start an engagement, and I think I could speak for most daily money managers, we try and learn who the POA is for our client, both the POA for healthcare and the POA for finance. And the client is almost always on board with this relationship. I've never been in a situation where they have not been on board with it, because this way, on one hand, everybody's on the same team. And in addition to understanding who the POA is, we can see if the power of attorney document is still current, and if the person who is assigned to be the POA is not in a position to take on that role anymore. We suggest that the client go back to their attorney and update the document so that they're protected. If the attorney is no longer in the picture, then again, we make the introduction to several attorneys that might be able to help them. In addition to requesting an introduction to the power of attorney, I also like to know who the advisory team is for the client. And again, generally speaking, the client is on board with this. They want one hand to talk to the other. And the advisory team I'm referring to is the wealth managers, the estate planning attorneys, and the CPAs. And with regard to the wealth manager, we talked about if somebody is overspending, we can assist with putting together a budget. And there are other tools that we can help, such as the TrueLink card, which is a prepaid refillable debit card and you can also determine what can or cannot be spent on it. And this is particularly helpful for people who have addiction problems. So we work with wealth managers and we work with CPAs to make sure that the accounts are funded and that estimated taxes get paid on time. And we also work with estate planning attorneys, as we've talked about before, to make sure that the documents are up to date and tight. So throughout this time, we've been talking about how daily money managers, what are some of the solutions that daily money managers provide. And now what I'd like to do is discuss some of the education that I share with families that I feel is very important for families to understand. And there are two themes in particular that I'd like to talk about tonight. And the first theme is the concept of financial cross-training. And what I mean by that is oftentimes in a relationship with a couple, one of the spouses might be responsible for the home front. That's usually the wife. And the other spouse is responsible for the financial, which is often the husband, but not always. And they don't talk about the finances. They're busy and they have a lot of responsibilities, and they simply don't talk about the basics of the finances. And that can be very dangerous, because if the financial spouse becomes incapacitated, the other spouse will be lost. So I encourage people to have those conversations to understand what the basic finances are and where the information can be found. So if that spouse who does the finances does become incapacitated, the other spouse is armed. So what are some of the basics that we talk about? Know where the checkbook is, and know where all the other banking information is. But both spouses should know where that is. In addition to that, if you have electronic accounts, know where the list of passwords and usernames and emails associated with those accounts are. Both partners should know how to contact the advisory team, the estate planning attorney, the CPA, the financial advisor. And finally, know where your investments are housed and how to have access to them. The second theme that I wanted to talk about, and Karen and I were actually just talking about this a little briefly earlier, is the concept of social engagement. And this cannot be stressed enough. And this is in regard to the senior in particular. I encourage clients to stay socially engaged because this helps them avoid isolation, and this helps them in becoming a victim of financial exploitation. And the truth of the matter is everybody is at risk. Elder financial exploitation crosses all social, educational, and economic boundaries. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have or how much money you have in the bank. Anybody is at risk. So some of the typical abusers include family members and caregivers, often people with addiction problems, friends and neighbors, telephone scammers, internet scammers, COVID scammers, financial advisors, home repair contractors, and even love scammers. I read an article recently in the art magazine, and I don't know if anybody else saw that, about a gentleman who started a website to help people learn about people that they met online. It's called something like Social Catfish. And it's basically a background check firm. And for a small fee, they provide you with the tools to learn about the background of somebody that you might have met online. And during the pandemic, a lot of people aren't going out and meeting people, they're meeting online. So his business is booming. And what you should know is that oftentimes older adults don't report abuse. And initially, I couldn't quite wrap my arms around this. I didn't quite understand it. And then as I read, it made sense. People don't want to get their kids in trouble. People don't want to get their caregivers in trouble. They rely on them. They're dependent on them. And they're often embarrassed. And often, if there's cognitive impairment, they might not even realize that it's happening. So it is so important for people to stay socially engaged, and the people that hopefully are keeping them company are reliable. They're able to keep an eye on the senior, whether it's a friend or family members that have their back, and somebody who could lend an ear to the senior if they feel like they might be taken advantage of. And if it's not a family member or a friend, hopefully it's a power of attorney. At this point, I do want to share a story about a client who was 69 years old and lived on a I'm sorry, not a two-flat, a two-story condo. And she fell down the stairs and broke her shoulder bone and then needed to have surgery. And then from surgery, she went into rehab. And she was in rehab for a couple months. And when she got out, she needed to have care around the clock. And so she hired this caregiving company. And what you should know is she was an only child and her parents were deceased. She was never married, so she didn't have a husband or kids, and she had very few friends. And she was also in the process of choosing a new power of attorney. So she hires this caregiving company, and the truth be told, she abdicated a lot of her financial responsibility to this caregiver, and she gave the caregiver a credit card to to run her errands and do her shopping, and she allowed the caregiver to do her banking. And this caregiver took the credit card and funded her drinking habit, and funded her groceries, and funded her Amazon purchases. And lucky for this senior that she had another caregiver who came on the weekends. And this second caregiver started to see all these Amazon purchases come in, and she knew that that was not normal for her client. And so she reported it. And the situation resolved itself, but this was $35,000 later. So the point here is, if this woman had a family member and a friend who watched over her, or a power of attorney, perhaps this situation would not have happened. There are safeguards that you could take against caregivers. Number one, you really should not give your credit card to a caregiver. If this is something that you might not have a choice, then contact your bank and ask if there's an authorized user caregiver credit card. But that still means you need to ask for receipts and verify all purchases, and make sure you look at your credit card statement to make sure that all the purchases on there are appropriate. You should also monitor your bank accounts and your phone bills. With regard to valuables, it's a good idea to have either a locked drawer or a safe to keep your jewelry and to keep your cash in, to keep your credit cards and your checkbook in. Set up automatic bill pay, auto pay, set up direct deposit, and never let caregivers manage your finances and pay your bills, and certainly never lend them money. So I would like to share now just a couple of case studies that are from Adult Protective Services, and that's the organization that we talked about earlier, the Organization of First Responders. And the first case study that I wanted to talk about was a woman by the name of Celia Green. And these aren't the real names of the people, but Celia Green was a 68-year-old woman with MS, and she lived on a two flat that didn't have a ramp or an elevator, and so she was in a wheelchair and homebound. She had her daughter Janice, who was her caregiver and took care of her shopping and her bill pay, and so things were running along smoothly until Cecilia's other daughter, Debbie, learned that the utilities were cut off. And Debbie didn't understand what was going on, so she called Adult Protective Services, and they investigated and found out that Cecilia's daughter, Janice, had a gambling problem, and that Janice was using her mother's resources to pay her gambling debt. And Cecilia had no idea that this was going on. And she did not want to press charges against her daughter. In fact, she wanted her daughter to continue taking care of her. So Adult Protective Services, they made Debbie, the daughter Debbie, responsible for Cecilia's finances, and they took away any access that Janice had to the finances. And they called the utility companies, negotiated a payment plan to pay for the outstanding balance of what was due and to turn the utilities back on. So the takeaway here is, if there are a couple kids in the picture, an ideal situation would be one child would pay the bills and the other child would oversee what was going on and reviewing the credit card statements and the bank statements. And essentially there'd be a system of checks and balances. So hopefully the situation would not have happened. In the second case study, it's a story about Mr. Bill Clausen, who was married for 52 years to his wife, Joy. And Joy, his wife, passed away. They had a son whose name is Ken, and Bill and Ken were very close, but the son traveled a lot and he wasn't always available. After Joy passed away, Bill felt that he didn't have a lot of energy to do anything. He really was not happy, and he was somewhat depressed. Fast forward, a neighbor, Susan Young, stepped in and befriended him, and she was 40 years younger than he was. And she started cooking for him and running errands for him, and then she started taking him out to movies and restaurants and other outings. And she slowly became his sole focus point for Bill. And initially, the son, Ken, was happy that his father was going out, but then he started to notice that his father was giving Susan expensive gifts and giving her a lot of money. And when he asked his dad about it, his dad didn't realize it was happening. So Ken became concerned that this woman, Susan, was manipulating his father, and she was so skilled at it and that he didn't even know it was happening. So he reached out to various organizations, including the the police and the district attorney's office, and he wasn't getting anywhere with them. And until he called Adult Protective Services, did he start finally to make some headway. And they verified his concern, and they said this is not uncommon. And then they started to investigate and find evidence that Susan was exploiting Bill. And they found enough evidence to bring it to the district attorney's office and convince them to prosecute Susan Young. So the takeaway here is that Bill Clausen was very lucky to have a son that was in the picture. And the other takeaway, though, that I would say is that if they had just a little bit more education to understand that these situations arise, it might not have taken place. And I want to take it one step further, and I want to say that I applaud you and for going to programs that the YMC has to learn about different situations that are out there, so that they're on your radar and that you won't become victim of exploitation should situations like this arise. Also, make sure that you read so that you learn about the latest and greatest scams that are out there, and they are out there, especially with COVID, which is another topic altogether. In light of this whole concept of social engagement and isolation, I wanted to share with you that I co-founded an organization called Living Well Intergenerational Social Club in 2017, and it was for the purpose of giving back to the community, but also to help others continue to lead purposeful lives, to help expand people's community so they stay socially engaged and minimize the risk of isolation. And so it's a social club open to adults of all ages, both men and women. We meet on the second Tuesday of every month. Before COVID, we met at restaurants and people just paid the restaurant directly. Now during COVID, we meet on Zoom and it's free. And we always have a speaker to educate us and, as I said, help us lead purposeful lives. And here are a couple pictures of previous events. Before COVID, we had Sarah Silver. She is the owner of Computer Companion, and she talked about different apps that make our lives easier. And then in December, we had Tom Driessen come speak to us. Tom is a comedian. He used to tour with Frank Sinatra, and he wrote a book, and he joined us from California. That's why Zoom is so awesome. And he talked about his book and his life story. It was wonderful. So I want to say thank you for having me here. And if you have any questions, I'd love to entertain them. If you have any stories, I welcome the opportunity to hear them.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
If people are interested in your social club, do they just email you to get involved?
They can definitely email me, and I will get them involved.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you.
Sure.
And I also wanted to ask you, I didn't do it while you were presenting, but I'm guessing one would just Google Adult Protective Services to find out how to contact them on behalf of someone or on behalf of themselves.
Yeah, and Karen, if you want, I can also get the link for you and share that with you, if that would help.
Oh, that would be great. Sure, sure. Although I'm happy to Google it, but that way I can send it out to the people who've joined us tonight.
Yeah, it is a simple Google search, and I'm pretty sure they still have an office at North Shore Senior Center.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Great. Debbie, do you have a question? Yeah, I see you raising your hand.
Yeah, I am. Hey, Ifat, it's very nice to see you. Yeah, I just want to tell everybody that Living Well Social is great. I've been to many of your programs and they're wonderful. I mean, it's so much fun to meet in person. Ifat finds all these fantastic places to meet. I met Pamela there. Karen, you know Pamela, who does our programming, and the comment I wanted to make, though, Ifat, I learned a lot tonight. I didn't really know about a lot of the things you talked about. And my question is, do you work with women, for example, who are contemplating divorce and trying to figure out, like what you said about how a lot of times there's division in a marriage and, one person does the finances and the other person does other stuff. Is that a common reason that people, maybe who are not necessarily older and need help with daily living or daily money management would consult a money manager and work with a money manager?
Absolutely. So I should add that I really didn't talk about my clients, but I do work with seniors as well as divorcees, busy professionals, and divorcees and people with disabilities. So to answer your question, yes, we do work with divorcees, and if they require other resources that relate to divorce, we're in a position to make those introductions.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I love that you're a resource for people to make introductions. And I'm hoping to put together a resource list of people in our community who can help people. And I mean, it sounds like you've got a wealth of 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 people that you can then refer people to, which is really terrific. So you're
It's
going on my list.
it's very important to me, and if I can make an introduction to more than one of a certain category, I do, because I feel it's important for people to talk to interview, so to speak, to
Yep.
find the right fit for them.
Excellent. Thank you. Wonderful. All right. I'm going to stop recording now.